Welcome back, Poggers, to another episode of the Pog State. This is going to be a really exciting one. We have a special guest joining us on the show that you may already have been spoiled. Don't know what's in the thumbnail or anything like that, but I'm not going to mention it right now. I'm going to allow her to make her big reveal when we do get into our Pog Memes section. We also have more poetry with Chronicler. This one, I'm a big fan of this one, so I'm hoping that you guys enjoy it as well. But I do want to talk about a specific thing that happened over the last couple of weeks. I think it was over a week ago now, but I think it was an important moment. It was when our good friend Wolf he made a bit of a public service announcement. I'll bring that up on the screen. We'll let Wolf tell the story for himself.
Can I ask T1 fans, can you guys be okay with this loss today? You guys almost beat the world champions the second time, and yes, game one was terrible, and yes, there were issues. But I know a lot of you guys want to see Faker, but can we actually be okay with this roster looking the cleanest that T1 has looked all season? Can we actually be okay with that? Can we be okay with T1 finally finding their identity? Can we not be typing frantically on the internet right now about whose fault it is? Is the coaching fault? Like, I wish LS, like, why didn't he coach? Like, what's going on? Like, can the furious typing just stop for a second? Can everyone just be like, wow, like, this is a moment where we could look and say, there's still a little bit of season left. Like, we still could potentially make playoffs. Like, we're still in the running for playoffs. Maybe this team just gets better and better with this roster. Like, can we be okay with this loss? I'm asking you, T1 fans. I think we can.
And so this was in reference to T1 when they unfortunately fell 1-2 to Damwon Kia. And there were a lot of people that were, pretty happy to throw blame around, things like that. Of course, I'm referring largely to the vocal minority. So if you feel like I'm calling you out when you didn't say anything, I apologize. This is not about you. This is about the vocal minority that does like to get very up in arms when it comes to anything that T1 does. And yes, there have been 9 iterations of the T1 roster. They have the 10-man roster. There is only one support. However, there are 3 junglers and 2 of everybody else, and everyone has been used very liberally throughout the season. And it's really interesting to me because at the beginning of the season, we saw this roster and we saw the fact that they had so many good players, and using an entire roster is a good idea just in general. How it's used, I think, is actually very important, but maybe not so much in the regular season of Spring, especially if you are still in a position to make it towards playoffs nonetheless. And there are a few things to talk about, right? Like, it's being on stage and getting all of your synergy worked out before you get to a playoff situation. I think that's very important. But there's also experimentation. And where is the time that we actually have for experimentation? I know that everyone is very sad that Faker hasn't been playing the last few games. Of course, at the time of this recording, it is before Week 8 has started. I don't know what team T1 are going to be fielding this time around. It could be any iteration. Who knows at all? And I think that we all have our own favorites of who we think should be on a roster, right? Me personally, I'm a huge fan of Teddy Carrier. I think that combo on the bottom side of the map is extraordinarily dangerous. But there are a lot of things that we don't know, which is like, do certain players play well together? Is there better communication when certain people are together and or not together on a team? And I think figuring all that sort of stuff out, especially in, the high pressure of a regular game, I think that you can experiment as much as you want in scrims, right? But is that going to be the same when you're playing for so much more, regardless of whether it's playoffs or just the regular season? So I think that there is a lot to talk about when it comes to T1 and these pretty extreme roster maneuvers that they are pulling, but I don't think that it is all that bad. And I actually side with Wolf with the fact that this team, even though they have been doing a lot of stuff that a lot of people might be a little bit upset about, which is included but not limited to Faker just not playing, and people get very upset about that. But I think finding the right iteration of a team is actually very important. And people like to say that Closer's really bad, but then Closer has incredible performances on Zoe, etc., and it makes the team actually look really good. Is he as stable as a superstar like Faker? Probably not yet, but you just don't know what's been happening behind the scenes. Maybe, in the scrims, he's just been doing a lot better. It's all speculation, and we don't know. And I think putting our trust into, a coaching staff that has won the most recent world championship is likely a decent idea. So that's my 2 cents. It's time for some shout outs now. From the LCK Global YouTube page, Lucas Pepicon says G-Sun, Key-Sun, and Valdez-Sun. But I have to say something. Humble Life Esports is the best Korean team right now. They'll win Worlds and MSI, and while Deft is crying, the world will return to peace again. I'm very confused about this. But it sounds a little bit like you're getting excited for Humble Life Esports. I don't know whether the KT rule applies, but it is scary. And we'll probably learn a little bit more about why it's scary in our Pog Memes section. And also the Humble Life Esports versus Gen.G drafting. Let's hope that turns around as well. SFSGR says LCK is a league of alphas. Don't necessarily know what that means, but I assume it's better than a league of betas, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Plus, alpha has, similar lettering to my name. Nice. League of me. Hardy with a period at the end just says yo. Yeah, what's up, Hardy? With a period at the end. Anyways, enough of my blabbering. It's time to give it up for Wolf, our resident memologist, and very special guest, Jeonghyun, for the Pog Memes. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Pog Memes. I'm Atlus, and I'm joined by Wolf, our resident memologist, as per usual, but I would love to offer a very warm welcome to Jeonghyun, who's come over from the Korean analyst desk. Welcome. How is it being on the Pog State? Did you even know that this thing existed?
Thanks for having me here, first of all. And
You're welcome.
no, I actually didn't, but you guys wanted me here, so I checked it out. I thought it was pretty interesting. So I am very glad that you gave me a call, and I hope to have a good time here.
Yeah, we are too. And this is probably something that a lot of our viewers had no idea about, because of course they're used to seeing you being pretty much silent with Ji-sun's voice going over on the analyst desk, and they probably had no idea that you spoke English so incredibly well. So I feel like we're extremely lucky to have you tie us into what is sort of the more Korean side of the broadcast. Plus, we have our resident meme lord over here, Mr. Wolf. So we can have some good fun trying to go over what are some of what the Korean community's been saying, as well as maybe mixing it in with what a lot of people in the Western side of things have been saying about Korean esports over the years. Because I think that we have an opportunity now to sort of go back in time a little bit more. And Jeonghyun, you started in the LCK. Not that long ago, right?
Yeah. That was like 8 months ago, I think.
Yeah, so how has it been, the transition to moving into esports? Because you were doing presentation work before, but not in esports. Is that right?
Well, I was in sports broadcasting, actually, for about a year. And honestly, I was like, even before I started, I've always been intrigued by LCK and esports. Because, it's so vibrant and the audience itself is so young and funny and fresh. But I honestly have no gaming background, like maybe a couple of solitaire games on my laptop. So for me, it wasn't easy to even decide to make this huge leap into esports. But, I think I'm doing okay. It is a lot of work. I mean, you have to put a lot of time into it. You have to get ready for the show, you have to write your own script, and you have to read a lot of articles, but at the same time, you somehow have to manage to come up with the time to play the actual game itself. And for me, it's not very easy because I am on I think 7-game losing streak at the moment.
Oh no.
But for me, I think the transition has been easier than, leveling up in terms of my tier,
I wanted to ask too, because I've actually done a lot of, I've changed games a lot in my career. You went from sports to esports now, but I started in StarCraft. I jumped from StarCraft to Heroes to Overwatch. Now League of Legends is my main game. And I know that there's been a lot of pressure sometimes associated with jumping into a new community. And I've also just recently done this in LCK as well. Do you feel like the fans have been very welcoming to you since you joined?
They have been like ever since the beginning. So I was very surprised because usually in other fields, especially like in sports, they don't really pay attention to like, new hosts coming in. It's more about the players and the game. But, like at first I was kind of shocked at how much attention that I was getting. And, like somehow my Instagram followers went up by like tremendous amount. And, it was like something I would have never imagined before. I don't know. It was pretty like fresh and new, but aside from the pressure, it was kind of hard to focus only on my job and like how to be more of a professional because of all the attention I was getting. But right now it kind of died away. So focusing more on how to put up a good show now. Yeah,
it must be difficult because like you were talking about with having to now start playing League of Legends from a solitaire background. But we have bantered for long enough. I think that it's time to get into some memes.
I think she has the first one. I think we're going to talk about
Jeonghyun, do you have
she wants to talk about the first
the
meme that kind of came out around but also what the meme that came out around you like when you first started because you have a nickname.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's start with that one then. You guys
Yeah.
just take it away. I don't know what I'm even doing here.
Yeah, hold on. So let me explain this for a bit, because so I have a meme myself. Thank God it's not the anger management one, but so they call me Nene Nuna or Nene Nemuse, so which roughly translates to yes, Parrot, because that's the way how I respond to the panels and the commentators a lot. It's something that I've been doing like as a source of my reaction, like repeatedly over 27 years of my life. I mean, I do this in everyday conversation, but I would just say, yeah, there, when I'm talking to you, right? So on the opening night of Summer, it was my debut, and I wasn't really aware because nobody pointed this out, but let's see what happened. So Bittori was actually talking about this one moment in the game, and start counting how many times I say yes.
굉장히 돌아오고 심지어 여기서 운명으로 마지막 카르메 위치까지 분명히 다섯 번에 지금 이게 아프리카 시야예요. 그렇죠. 아프리카가 이런 플레이를 하기 위해서 스페를 뽑았지만 미스틱 선수는 미드를 커버했고 그 순간 플라이 선수도 미드로 가면서 미드 원딜의 동선이 겹쳤고 스페가 탑에 합류하는 순간 공수 싸움이 났으면 트위스트 페이트의 크릭의 의미는 없어지죠. 그렇죠. 그렇기 때문에 저기서 한 번 더 욕심을 내지 말았어야 되는데 중계진이 언급해 주신 것처럼 자르반이 기창을 끊었던 것 때문에 오히려 순간적으로 선수들이 좀 집중력 판단이 틀어져서 우리가 이 조합으로 뭔가 굴려야 되는 압박감 때문에 이제 실수가 나왔어요. 그런 실수 때문에.
The nickname you got, it was Nemuse, right? Because it's like a parody of Engmuse, which means parrot. So it's Nemuse because she's repeating Ne. So just to give the fans that context, I think it's pretty funny because, it is so common as well. Like every host does it. So it's weird they kind of zoomed in on you for this one.
Yeah.
But I really
it's like you were the first one, so you get it.
It's a cute name, it's good.
It could have been way worse. I don't know what would have been worse, but if it's just like a weird pun about a parrot, that's adorable, and I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
So like I think it
I'm
seems like a high
lucky.
roll to me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I am grateful.
You are welcome. I'm glad that we bring you on to Pog Memes and you have your own meme to come out with straight up. That's actually just the best. Because I think we covered Wolf's self meme at the beginning in his first episode as
I'm
well.
just a living meme. It's unfortunate, I walk down the street and some of these people point at me and they say, Budechige, and I'm like, no, I'm a person actually. Like
Perfect. Speaking of the living memologist himself, Wolf, is it now your turn? Do you have something for us?
So I think that Jeonghyun wants to talk about this as well, but there's a lot of lookalikes in the LCK, right? Krug and Gorilla, one of the ones that a lot of people think of. Most recently, Klid and BDD. So much so that one of our famous esports,
actually.
One of our most famous esports writers was tweeting about BDD, I think, and accidentally posted a picture of Klid, even though he's a huge Gen.G fan and loves both players. But as you can see here, they look really similar. And then, a lot of people said Def looks like an alpaca. One of the ones that our writers for the show put in was On Fleek and Untar, which I never saw before, but I looked it up before the show, and I'm like, yeah, actually, I see that. I never saw that one before. Well, this is kind of like is called a Krug meme in Korea, and I'll let Jeonghyun explain where the history comes from for this.
Yes. So I would like to explain about the Krug bros. So, Ancient Krug and Krug, they look alike, right? And so whenever there's a look-alike in the LCK scene, people would call them the Krug bros. And I think one of the oldest meme there is, look at this.
So good.
So these two guys were in the crowd and they both fell asleep. And like, if it was an all-star match, I can get it, man. They were like looking for some high-level League of Legends, and maybe it wasn't as good as LCK normally is. These guys fell asleep in the crowd, and they had the same expression right while they're sleeping. Like, they had the same sleeping position. Their reaction was very similar when they woke up as well. Is to just kind of like immediately start clapping and acting naturally.
People started clapping because they were on the screen. Like, I don't know if the game was boring, but when the cameraman kind of got them together, that's why it was so funny. And then people started clapping. And then they had no idea
what's going
they
on.
started clapping together. But how they reacted, it was all the same. But the behind story is, this is amazing because they came with different parties. They're not friends.
What?
They're complete
they didn't actually come
strangers.
together,
Yeah, they're not friends.
so
That's
good.
why it's so interesting. And then after a while, they did become friends, and then ended up going to the matches together, and kind of took an advantage of their memes. But I wonder what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I wonder
Well,
what
they're
happened.
probably
They're
waiting
doing
for
well
LOL
in
Park
life.
to reopen. That's what they be doing. They're waiting for LOL Park to reopen so they can get a good sleep. That's what I assume.
And I just want to add on to the thing about Clit and BDD, and maybe like the European fans and foreign fans in general think that Korean people can tell them apart. But me and Subin, actually, when we stepped into LCK scene, we had to memorize all the faces of the players. And it was really hard, like telling them apart, and they were on the same team as well. They had the same hair, kind of similar bone structure. So we would just Google up every single picture of Clit and BDD, put them in a random slideshow, and we would just go on and on about this picture definitely is Clit, and then Subin would say, no, that's BDD, and then I would be like, no, it's Clit, and we would call somebody up to help us. And so they would come into a room and they're like, I'm not really sure. Let me check. So it is definitely confusing,
Oh my God.
but I think it's so funny because they do interviews together a lot.
Thankfully, once you get used to it, you actually feel like, oh, well, there's no way that you can mess this up. But now I can completely understand, especially with the fact that, there are lookalike memes going on even in the Western chat with everyone having exactly the same haircut. The exact same haircut thing is something that our Twitch chat just cannot understand at all.
I think it's also
For both of them.
the funny thing is this happens a lot with teammates in particular because they're also wearing the same clothes all the time, no matter what, because they're wearing the same jersey, right? Which is something you don't really think about, but they look similar, but then they're also wearing the exact same shirt, right? And they're sitting in a house that has the same logos all over everything, and it's they're just right next to each other. The only way it could be more crazy is if they were the bot duo, where they're in the same lane also, That'd be the only way it could be more okay, how many more conditions do we have that make these two players look so linked together?
Don't we actually, about that, don't we need to now transfer Delight to Gen.G so that you get Delight and Ruler, which is the other one, and then you've got Cleared and BDD as well. And I don't know who looks like Rascal, because we need to have them as a sub or a coach.
So the next thing I want to hit on is a meme that Jeonghyun also wants to talk about here, and it's something that I've actually talked with Ji-sun, our translator here at the LCK, with quite a lot, which is how do we become such a strong team again, or how do we become such a strong team meme, which started.
I resonate with this one a lot.
Yeah,
as a KT fan.
It's very similar to the KT, meme that everyone has, don't get excited about KT in the West. But it actually started with baseball, and actually, since you're a sports host yourself, maybe I'll let you explain the history of this one.
This is an ancient curse. It goes all the way back to 2013. So this magazine was published in 2013 May. And Kia Tigers was doing pretty well in April, and as soon as this article was published, their winning percentage dropped tremendously. It was such a drastic drop. And then in August, they were never able to recover, right? So the curse started getting credits at that moment. So if you look at the winning percentage, so in April,
it went terrible.
it was really high. And then in May, right after the article was published, their winning rate dropped by twice the amount, and then just never recovered. So that's where the curse started, but it kind of was brought back to life when in 2019, Africa Freaks, they were on a 3-game winning streak, and Yukal was actually on Africa Freaks, right? So he was very excited, and
아프리카는 어떻게 강팀이 되었는가?
저거는 좀.
when Yukal was like, how did Africa Freaks become such a strong team? And then right after that, they went on a 3-game losing streak straight away.
Yeah.
And it was such an important games for them because they really needed to climb up the ladders in terms of the standings. But they weren't just getting that flow going. And even in an interview when they broke out of the curse, Keen had to do an interview explaining that, no, I do not think it's Yukal's fault for putting the curse on us and stuff. So I thought it was pretty nice. Yeah.
But yeah, it was also really funny too because this happened this season, right, with Pyoshik, where after DRX ended up coming back and winning some important matches, Pyoshik said it, I think, in his in the comms, right, in house. And then when he said it, it was like everyone was like, "Oh no!" Like everyone in chat was starting to get stressed out. Like he's done it again. And I think that's the funny thing about this meme is that, like, I mean, there's a lot of curses in LCK and in esports in Korea in general across like all titles. But the funny thing about this meme is like, if you like think about it from like a almost stats perspective or a scientific perspective or whatever, if you want to like look at it like grounded in reality, the reason why this happens so often, I think, is because teams that are underperforming suddenly have like 1 or 2 off games, but then they go back. As soon as they said this, right, they go back because actually they had just overperformed for a second and then they went back to like where they were before, right? So I think this is something that like is explainable, right? But it is so funny, and it feels like when this gets said publicly by one of the players, or sometimes by an analyst, that this curse continues to happen, it almost feels like it's something that psychologically can like impact the players, where they start to get like
no, it's literally a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As soon as they do that, they put all the pressure on themselves, and then you're gonna fail with much more likelihood. Like it's just one of those things that happens. But thank you so much, Jeonghyun, especially for coming on the show. It's been great to have your insight. Do you have anything that you'd like to say to the Western fans as sort of a goodbye?
Well, yeah. I mean, this was kind of my hello, my first official hello to the foreign fans, right? Ever since I started working with LCK, my role model has been Shock. So I would be like, telling everybody that someday I would be the Shocks of LCK. And for me, like, to be able to speak English kind of gives me the chance to be able to connect with the worldwide League of Legends community. And I think it's what the community has been looking for. And I feel like I can bridge the gap there is, right? And I feel like, as much as I love LCK itself, I feel like there's a bigger world for me, and that is just the worldwide League of Legends community. So I hope to see you guys at the Worlds.
Hell yeah.
And see, you'll be seeing a lot more of me, and I hope you guys, say hello to me all the time, send me some warm messages instead of the mean ones. And
we appreciate it so much. Having the like Korean Shocks over here is that's a very exciting notion. I don't know how it's going to happen, what's going to happen there, but I will help you try to achieve that goal because it sounds super awesome. So thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you as well, Wolf, for coming on to Pog Memes once again. No, it's always just so much fun. Hopefully we can have both of you back on the show. I feel like this has been the best Pog Memes section that we've ever done. So maybe we're just gonna have to do it again.
I'm down for that.
That will do it, ladies and gentlemen, for Pog Memes, but make sure that you stick around because we've got some sweet, sweet Pog poetry coming up right now. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another installment of Pog Poetry. I'm Atlus, and I'm now joined by the Chronicleizer, or just Chronicler if you want to say his name correctly. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, I've been in the process of moving out of the Airbnb that I was stuck in for 2 weeks, and then got to stick around in for 2 more weeks. And I have now moved. Place is still fairly empty, as you can see.
You look like
from
you've
the
moved to
general...
heaven or something like that.
I know.
Because it's so bright in the background. It's actually kind of cool.
I know. It's very dramatic, you know. The sun lighting me up as I come to bestow my poetry on the Pog State viewers. That's what we're going for here.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly the right vibe. I'm all about it. The moving process went well. I know, like I went over and we put together a wardrobe together. That was a lot of fun. You cooked me some delicious soup, and that was a really good time. Looks like a really nice place. I reckon you've nailed it. You've done really well. Plus, you're only like a 5-minute walk from my joint, which is cool.
Yeah, it's super close to the station. Like, and I, honestly, all credits go to Wolf here, because I was pretty stressed about like moving to a new place, because you come in, you don't speak the language. And Wolf would just like took me in his backpack, went to like 3 people, like spoke to them in Korean, and here we are. So that all worked out pretty expertly. It's really, really nice. I just need some plants and some more decoration, because it's still a little bit empty. I don't know if you can hear the echo, but we're getting more and more stuff.
It does look a little bit like there's not a lot going on in the background there. I do like the dangling cord that's coming out. I think that's providing you with some internet. Excellent. Oh yeah, that's what we need.
Well, it wasn't initially, right? That was a big problem. we had to kind of figure that one out. But it does now bring me the internet, fortunately, because otherwise it's a pretty bleak existence.
Yeah, no, that's the most important thing to set up. So, we're gonna change things up a little bit this time around, Chronicler, and I apologize because I'm stealing a little bit of your thunder, but I think that this might be hilarious. I have not actually seen this poem yet that you've written for us. And what my idea is that I'll read it without any context at all, trying to do my best job, and then you can adjudicate not only my performance, but also take us through exactly what the poem represents and what the story is behind it. What do you think?
Yeah, love it. Hit it. I can't wait to see the twist you're going to put on this.
All right, without further ado, let's get into the zone. All right. Here it is. Day after day, your screen turns grey as another loss adds to the record. And night after night, you pretend it's all right. But the losses keep stacking, we have no jungle tracking. And the grind isn't very much fun anymore. But we will persist through the grit and the mist. A moment of weakness is all it takes. Our shouts will echo as their nexus breaks, no matter if they stand as 5 or stand as 10. Our sound and fury will be halted by no men, blaze onwards through trial by fire. The green wings of victory bring us higher and higher. Stuck in a sandpit and pummeled by rocks, beware of the hungry bite of the underdogs.
What do
you think?
No. Ah, you smashed it, and then you did the pinky thing, and you just lost it, man. You were in the zone. It was really
I don't know,
good.
For some reason, I felt like I had a Dr. Evil vibe at the end there, so I just had to go with it. The power of the poetry overtook me.
Ruined.
You know, sometimes it's hard. I liked the green wings of victory, though. I feel like that's a bit of a shout out to our friends over at Fred at Brion, who have just acquired an extra green wing member, and now they're looking a little bit better. Is that what that one came from? Because otherwise, I feel like this one's a little bit more subtle.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I kind of went away. This one is very referential. So there's reference to music, there's reference to anime, there's reference to Shakespeare, to general pop culture. There's a lot like of hidden layers there.
I feel like a lot of it went straight over my head, so I think you're going to have to explain a bit of it.
I mean, honestly, like I always like referential works of art, right? Like so it can be self-referential. I think this is something that, for example, BoJack Horseman does really well, where it just refers to itself or community indefinitely. But also, if you look at a lot of my favorite artists, they're very referential to pop culture or to whatever they are in at the moment. So the first 9 lines actually are basically ad verbatim a Pink Floyd song. So it has a very set rhythm.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's from one of these turns. So normally it'd go, day after day, your screen turns grey as another loss adds to the record. But then obviously that's not the actual line. But that was, and it actually came pretty close, right? Like, because I wrote it with that specific type of rhythm in mind. And you actually came approximate, like, so that's a sign that the original song was very well written.
Yes, well, I mean, it is Pink Floyd, so they're pretty good at that. They've had a few in their time. Yeah,
I mean that you know, they have their moments. I say as one of as a really big fan. I think maybe first like looking at it as a whole, because I'm immediately diving into like the more nitty gritty of it. But it supports 2 like interpretations, and I'm personally where like the entire song is about the underdog experience, which is just what Liv Sandbox, Afrika, Fred Brion have all been going through throughout basically the entirety of the split, right? Where you just lose, and then you lose, and you lose, and you lose, and like you just Liv Sandbox turn it around a little bit, and Fred Brion, you get your win left and right? But like as a whole, I don't know, man. Like if you could lose in casting and like you'd spend your entire life on like trying to be a good caster, and then you just lost every game, like I don't know, that will break my mental, man.
Yeah, no, I understand.
When like, you know, when we're done casting and you get like, you and me both get like, one of us wins, the other one loses, like, oh no. And then you just lose.
If it was a competition every time we sat on a caster desk, no.
That's my point.
That's not how it's supposed to go.
Yeah,
that's too scary. So largely it's about the underdog experience, but I think that there are some other references in there as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because it can also be read differently, where you're just looking at the general pressure that a lot of teams face. Of course, there is a reference to a 10-man roster, because our 10-man roster is not doing well. That I don't know what roster is going to be fielded, as I don't think anyone does. Although the internet detectives have been very diligently working on that case. But it also just kind of details the general drive that I think a lot of these teams have, and that are what really attracts people, you know, to the LCK and just competition in general, right? It's like wanting to win, which is a very base human emotion, but then it gets dialed up to like infinity and beyond, which I think is really cool.
No, it's awesome. Actually, I really enjoyed this poem. I got, you know how when you like listen to really great music or something that hits you just right, you get the weird like shivery tingle thing.
Yeah.
I had that at the very end whilst just reading it out. So you definitely deserve a bit of a shout out to that one. Don't know whether that's shared by anybody else, but I personally had a great experience. So,
well, what I'm also glad you picked up on is where the initial rhyming scheme and like the general flow of the words is it's slow, right? Like it's kind of depressing. And then as you progress throughout the poem, which is as we're ramping up to playoffs, I kind of found the feeling that a lot of people have is like these matches are becoming more intense, becoming like more exciting, and you can see that in terms of the phrasing as well. So you have, you know, green wings of victory bring us higher and higher, which, as you pointed out, it's 100% green wings, right? Like that's you know, green wings. Although the wings of victory, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is also an Attack on Titan song, and it's like something that comes back a lot there, right? So I'm like, yes, that works. But as a whole, it becomes much more. This is hard for me to translate. Like, it becomes a lot more like brazen and like more celebratory, and like as kind of an like a war song. Or like something that's supposed to pump you up, and I think that contrast is really nice, and you nailed that, so I was happy about that. You kind of felt like that the lines were supposed to take you like kind of speed up and like raise your intensity.
I just let the poem speak through me, don't worry. that's what I did. I was
synergy,
just trying to channel.
Yeah, I think in contrast to the one we did before, where it was a lot more, it was very clear, like reference this, reference this, reference this. This to me was more kind of a treatise on, we've seen some crazy upsets. I think the most upsets that I've seen in a long time within the LCK, where teams that are regarded as weak actually do have a legitimate fighting shot. Because of course there's always instances like, I think Hanwha Life comes to mind, where some of their drafts are just very questionable, and sometimes it works out with Lilia mid.
Awful,
sometimes,
I think is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, that works as well. Sometimes it's just awful, as in, I think the Lilia mid wasn't awful. I think the full AD composition, like 1 damage, only Tristana, 3 tank composition was a very bad example. But I think it's also important to recognize that 2 things have been happening within the LCK, and it's that underdogs actually, when they win 2-0, right? Like, it's not like just a fluke best of 1 win, but like Fred O'Brien 2-0, Liv Sandbox 2-0, Fred O'Brien 2-0 again, this time T1. Like, that says a lot more, because I think especially best of 1s, right? Like, teams win unless you're in the LEC and you play against G2, but like generally teams drop games randomly, and it just kind of happens. But when it's a 2-0, it actually says a lot to me, at least, about the form of a team on a certain day. And that's kind of what this this poem is also meant to kind of capture, is that feeling of, like, you're not that far above us. Like, you're better if you're playing well. But if you're not playing well, like, these margins are pretty thin. And you can still get absolutely smacked. And then you get, like, the shouts will echo as that Nexus breaks. I just love the moment when, like, Fred O'Brien, 2-0 dumb one for the first time, or when Liv Sandbox, like, absolutely stomped Gen.G. Like, those moments when the players are like, I can't believe this.
Yeah, bouncing out of their chairs at the end of the
that to me
game,
is like,
things like that. Yeah,
it doesn't get better.
That's why we do it, man.
LCK
that's why we
winning
do it.
Worlds, right? Like, that's the only thing that's better than that. But like, outside of that, I love it. It's so good.
No, it's amazing. I actually really like this poem because it was more of like it's more of an emotional story that's not necessarily represented in the words, more about sort of like the vibe of how it all goes. And I do like the fact that it's like moving towards something that is going to be a huge climax, because I think you're right. I think playoffs are going to be very, very interesting. I mean, we were having arguments about this, right? Like, we went out on Tuesday, we were hanging out, and I don't think anyone really knows who our last couple of teams are going to be in the playoffs. And I argued for, I don't know, an hour and a half with a mate of ours about Gen.G versus DRX and who's going to be in second place. And I was vehemently against DRX being in second place, but to be perfectly honest, they could. Like, if they keep doing their weird DRX things and just win, it could be a thing that happens. So it is it's all very interesting, and I'm very excited to see how it's going to go. And of course, our viewers at home right now are in the future compared to what is today, which is the beginning of week 8. And we could be talking about all of these underdog stories when there was an upset victory at some point during this week's games that has only just made your poem ever more relevant, which is very exciting, because I think we do have a lot of top versus bottom style matches in this week's of games.
We have no clue what's going to happen, but I think, don't pin me on this, but every week there's been at least like one crazy upset. I think it all started off when Damwon Kia got 2-0 by Fred O'Brien, and like ever since, the universe just hasn't recovered from like
I think so
what's happening. So this split for the LCK, obviously it's been a really amazing split, because I get to be in Lore Park and I get to talk about LCK and it's like my job now, which I still haven't really gotten used to. Like, that's still kind of a process that's ongoing, but it's really been about these crazy upsets. And I think as a whole, we talked about this a lot as well, but I personally feel like, even though some of the like actual in a vacuum decisions made are very questionable when it comes to stuff like drafting, I am very happy to see the LCK progress past R5 Aatrox, right? And like just picking whatever we have picked for like the last X amount of time. And I think it's going to take a while for us to actually get good at that. But the fact that it's happening in of itself, if it's targeted and if it's like if it's looked at correctly and it's pushed gently in the right direction, I think it's really good for us as a region, because it makes us much more versatile. And historically, our problem has not been that we're like not good enough to win. It's been that we've been super predictable, right? Like, that's just been And then you meet G2
Actually,
and they're like...
I'm really glad you brought this up because Cloud Templar recently spoke about this. And one of the biggest changes that the LCK has been through is that we're going with picks that we haven't necessarily put in, 25 games on the day before, in preparation. And like, there's a lot of teams that won't actually, or in the past especially, that wouldn't actually play a champion even though it was busted until they felt like they had a certain amount of proficiency on it. Like, how many scrims have we played with this champion? How many times has, our mid laner played this particular pick in solo queue, right? Like, have we grinded enough in order to utilize this? And now people are like, YOLO, let's just do it. Let's just throw in, whatever we want to play in this instance because we feel like it just might work. And Cloud Templar was talking about it as being one of the biggest changes, and I think that that's entirely true. And I think that there are a lot of teams around the world, in China and in Europe especially, that they'll just pick stuff if they feel like it fits their composition. And in the LCK, we've been doing that, but it hasn't necessarily been working out. You mentioned Humble Life already with their pretty woeful drafting, but I think it does stem from the right idea, which is being able to pivot and utilize a lot of different things in the moment in order to, get a victory that they're looking for. I think G2 is probably the team that is the best example of being flexible in draft, even though sometimes they flex so much that they break their own arm. Like, it is still, like, I think a really, really powerful tool that a team can have if they can utilize it. And hopefully we'll see that when our LCK representative does go to Iceland. For MSI as well. Don't know who that's going to be. It's probably going to be Damwon, but you never know.
I love an underdog story, but Don Monkey is also way too good. Like, they still are.
Yeah.
So there's scenarios in which I see, so in my head there's a couple of options, right? Like, because I think the teams where I'm like legitimately there's a universe in which they can beat Damonkia are DRX, Gen.G, Hanwha Life, and I think T1 as well, if they had played the entire roster with like the same roster. So maybe if they can scram like 6 weeks of experience into the last 3 weeks, then possibly. But especially those first 3, but they're so different as well in how they approach the game. Because for Hanwha Life, it will be Chovy and Deft hard carrying. I thought we moved away from that, but turns out we didn't.
Nope.
Gen.G is self-explanatory. Just if they could be regular season Gen.G in playoffs, that's all. It's really all you need. I mean, we don't need to really waste more words on that one. Like, just give us.
That's all we need. We need Gen.G to be the same team that they were during the regular season when they get to a high pressure situation.
Yes, that's all. And then we have DRX, who will, like you get one of those big magician's hats, and you throw like a lot of things in the hat, and then you just like go and do you find a rabbit? Do you find a composition that doesn't work? Does Pioshik find a new jungler that he can take and like run fast at people with? It's nobody knows, and I think DRX doesn't know at this point in time either yet. But they have a lot of fun and momentum behind them. And honestly, anyone that beats Damwon Kia is a cool storyline, right? Because Damwon Kia are they're just so good, right? Like it'd be completely fine if they win, because I think they have the biggest chance of winning MSI if they go, right? Like, I don't think it's even close. I don't think anyone comes remotely close to the power of that team. But it'd be so cool if it's someone else. Although then we do have to kind of like, it's better for our enjoyment and the viewers' enjoyment of LCK, but MSI, we just forget about MSI. Just leave that.
Imagine if it was Humble Life Esports that heads to MSI and EDG qualifies from the LPL and we get Viper versus Chovy. Oh my god, man. It would be so good. It would be so good.
Wait, it can be better.
Oh, it's just getting me excited for Worlds, dude.
Atlus.
Yeah, man.
Afrika Freaks make it through. They win in a miracle run, and then it's Lehens versus Viper. It's even better. It can happen.
Oh my god. And then somehow 100 Thieves qualifies from NA, and then Bang gets to go against his old org or something like that.
Yes. I love it.
Oh my god. No, that is absolutely beautiful. I think that will do it for the Pog Poetry section for today's show. Thank you so much, Chronicler, for coming on the show once again. It is always an absolute joy. Thank you for allowing me to butcher your poem. I hope I did it as much justice as possible. And the next time, I promise I'm going to be better. We'll see if we can have some more fun with it, because this is really, really cool. So thanks for being on this part of the episode. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching Pog Poetry, and we'll see you next time. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. If you liked it, make sure you like it and leave a comment, leave a review, all that good stuff. Help us help you by helping us get some sponsorship so that we can make even more sweet stuff happen on the Pog State. In 2 weeks' time, we have our last episode of the season. More Pog moments and more sweet, sweet Pog Lab coming right at you. But that will do it for this episode. Please enjoy some LCK games, and we'll see you next time.